Hi, and welcome to JRDF's Quick Tips series on model assembly. Today we are going to be showing you how to dry fit your model pieces. So let's get started. Today we are going to be covering dry fit. So the dry fit is a really important part after you've removed your scaffolding and before you do your gluing. Now it's a lot more important than people give it credit for. It's really important to look at all your pieces and make sure that they fit together before you glue them. And also taking into consideration as well how they're going to fit together once there's a layer of paint on it that's a little bit snug, then that's not ideal either. So let's just have a look at, first of all, what tools and equipment we're going to need. Really don't want. So there's your first one. You want your scalpel. Next up, we're going to definitely need the piece of sandpaper that you've been supplied in your kit. This is 600 grit sandpaper. It should really cover the bases for everything that you need. And later on, we'll be discussing dry and wet sanding techniques and what that means for your model. And that's all we've got. So we've got this little sanding piece here, and it's really great because you've got a nice point on there, so you can kind of get into a lot of detail. It's really hard. And then you can also just sort of twist that round to kind of freshen your sandpaper. Let's have a little look at the different kinds of drawing. Now, if you're unsure, you will have your instruction leaflet. This one particularly, we're doing the freelancer. But your different instruction booklet will tell you depending on what ship you have. So we're just going to have a quick look at these pieces here. This is quite an easy one, so you can kind of see where that's expected to fit in. Now I can see that that's not sitting totally flush there. And I can see now. So the whole point of a dry fit is to make sure that everything fits nicely before you glue it. Another thing that you really want to take into consideration when you're doing this is how you're painting your pieces. So a lot of people have a much bigger preference to paint the pieces separately and then assemble it afterwards. Um, for the most part, that is what I do. So you also have to consider as well that if you're going to have layers of paint on that, that is going to change the sort of the snugness or the fit of the piece. But in this example, I can actually see just in here that there's just a little bit in there. So I'm just going to take my wee knife and I'm just going to neaten off that edge just ever so slightly. And there, you shouldn't have to do too much at this stage. It is all quite little fiddly bits. And really using your eye to kind of say, okay, what's going on here? Why is that not sitting flat and flush? It's in a little bit nicer. Yeah, and I think that is still not a very good fit. Oh, that's because we're trying to put it in the wrong way around. Fantastic. So if you can see there, it's a pretty nice fit. I think that'll sit quite well. So that's pretty much like kind of one of our glued edges, just to kind of show you how well those pieces fit together. Using the Yeah, so we're just going to have a little quick look at the magnet joins and how we want them to look before we glue the magnets. Okay, so if you can see here, I've got these three pieces. I'm just going to stick with this piece. It seems to be my lucky charm, especially with that little packaging. So with these magnet joins, you really want to make sure that the fit isn't very snug. Like you want a kind of loose fitting connection because it's really the magnet that you want that to hold into place. So I can see here that this one, it's a little bit snug. You know, it's not a tight fit. But by the time these parts get paint and all the rest of it, that's not going to fit in that hole. So I'm just going to have a little look along the inside just to see if there's any sort of high points or kind of contact points. And then the same on this piece and where we think that we can kind of shave a little bit off. Now I can see that the contact points were on this bottom edge, so that's probably a good place to start. And also see that I've not sanded that particularly flat there. I don't know how well you can see that. So that's a pretty good place to start actually. So let's just take that in. And what you'll need to do, have the pieces that you're fitting together close and just keep trying them until you're happy with the fit. Um, there we go. And then I'm just going to take a little bit of this. I think what I might also do, let's just try that one again there. Once again, cast your eyes over. See if you can't see anything that's potentially causing it to hold into place. So you can see, I keep wanting to put this in the wrong way. I was right in the first place. Okay, there we go. So you can see this end's coming away quite easy. And I can see there that whatever's causing this to be held into place, it's at this end. So usually you'd have a little look at this piece. I probably won't try and take anything off of that because it's quite a complicated sand to try and get into there. Don't want to mess that piece up. So I'm just going to keep taking a little bit more off of this. And it's just a little bit at a time, just a tiny little bit at a time. You don't want to take away too much. And because there's two pieces for this, you are going to want to check both of them. This one's perfect, but it just falls right off. And that is exactly what you want for a magnetized piece. So luckily we don't have to do any work on this one. It's just this wee guy that we need to do a little bit extra on. It's okay. I like the little footery bits, you know. Okay. And you can feel it when you pull it off. And once again, it's still this front edge. So I'm just very lightly touching it. And wherever that's got contact, that's where I know that we need to keep badgering away and sanding that down. I'm going to give a good check into here just to make sure that there's nothing, no wee lumps or bumps, but it's definitely not. So I'm just going to keep taking a little bit more off of this. And yay. Let's put it in first time. Okay, but that's quite nice and loose. We're getting somewhere. So as much as that was fiddly, we can now see that that is a much better fit for what we're going for these magnets. I might still take a little bit more off of there. Um, I'm pretty happy with that. Um, so there we go. That's how to prepare your magnet joins, and that's kind of what we're looking for with that. The next kind of join we're going to look at is the gravity join, which isn't really a join per se, but two pieces do kind of go together. So a gravity join is basically we don't need to worry about glue and we want it to be fairly loose. So this little turret piece here, we want that to sit flush with the edge. Now that's actually pretty tight just now. And once this gets painted, that adds another layer. You know, we're talking microns here, but actually microns make a difference. So the two sort of areas that we're going to want to look at is just getting to sand just in that little hole, and then obviously around this edge as well, because we want that to be pretty loose fitting, so that that can turn. Thicker pieces first. There we go. And that means, see that? So what I've done here is I've just rolled up that little piece of sandpaper and I'm just taking it through there. You can really see where any high points are. You could theoretically use a lower grit sandpaper for this, but we really want to make sure that we're not damaging any of this top piece as well. And then the next wee bit that we're going to do is just looking at this outside edge as well, and just make sure that we can I think I did a pretty good job at cleaning this up already when we were kind of taking it off the scaffolding at the initial sanding. But there's no harm in just kind of making it nice and that wee extra bit smooth. I'm just, there we go. You can see that. I'm just curving that sandpaper around that edge. So I've got holding the sandpaper like that. So I'm making a little curve. You can see. And then just sand in there. Probably go around that a couple of times. It's because I know it was a really snug fit, so it's gonna take a decent amount of sanding just to get that done. There we go. So let's have a little look at how that wants to fit now. Okay, so it's a lot looser, which is what we were going for. I still think, taking into consideration the paint, that I would like to take a little bit more off of that. I also kind of want to check just on the underside of here that I've noticed that there's a few little flash points there too. So I'm going to use my teeny tiny little bit. I have a bit of an obsession with using teeny tiny little bits of sandpaper. There we go. And that's the underside's done. And we'll just pop that back in and check. Yeah, that's nice and loose now. So I'm quite happy with that fit. I hope this dry fitting tutorial was helpful for you. Thanks for watching. And welcome to JRDF's Quick Tip series on model assembly. That sounds fucking filthy.